Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith, getting ready to go over this 4-game main slate at DraftKings. It's a tiny slate, so we should not take too much of your time. If anything we do here does help you out, though, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and come join us in Discord. Discord is currently free. We also give out free core picks for the DraftKings main slate. If you prefer to play on FanDuel, we do have a package over on our Patreon for our FanDuel core plays, and we also hand out DK Night Slate picks when there is a night slate to play. All right, let's get to it here. We go position by position, highlighting the best plays. Up top, Cade Cunningham has the best projection with a 55 fantasy point projection against the Bulls. Best matchup of the slate. He looks awesome at 10.5K. Taylor, are you going to pay for him on this tiny slate?
Yeah, I probably will. Just very good form for him without Ivy. A lot of usage to ground without Ivy. Matchup is as good as it gets, like you said. Small slate. There are a lot of good options to pay up for at different positions, but 10-5 for Cade in that spot looks pretty good. Detroit has a high total. Really no issue with it. Kind of depends on whatever news breaks, but point guard always has a lot of other options as well.
Yeah, so speaking of other options, like there are other options, like you said, RJ Barrett's out, so Scotty Barnes is going to look a little bit better than usual, but on the road against Philly, especially if Embiid ends up being in, I don't know if I love that. Devin Booker is always in play. He has the ceiling, but KD is back. Best game environment of the night against Memphis. But again, like, why not just go up 1,000 more for Cade or go down to maybe to Brunson, who is projecting pretty well and has a pretty comfortable spot against a top 11 Pacers team. He's been good against them too on the year. So I don't know. Like right now, it's really hard to not play Cade, even though he's the most expensive play, I think, of the entire slate, especially at the position. But he projects really well, and like you can't ask for a better matchup. So right now, I think Cade is the way to go up top. That's the way I'd invest my high dollar money. But one guy I do kind of like is Ja Morant. He played a bunch of minutes last game. The Suns are not a difficult matchup, and that game environment is really, really good. And he's not pulling a ton of ownership. So he's kind of interesting at 8.6, especially with Brunson carrying ownership. So how do you feel about Brunson and Ja?
Yeah, I like the Memphis side of that game. I assume we're going to play a lot of Phoenix value with Bradley Beal out. So
yeah,
running it back with someone on Memphis makes sense. Ja's a good value, like you said. I think each of the big three is good on this slate, Jackson and Bane being the others. So no qualms with it. I think it's worth mentioning Maxey. Like no one ever wants to play Maxey, but regardless of Embiid being in or out, like he still gets usage. He's still well over a fantasy point per minute with Embiid on the floor. And Toronto is not a very imposing matchup. They don't have Davion anymore, for example. So if no one's going to play Tyrese Maxey at under 10K again, playing 38 plus minutes, I think in each of the last 7 or 8 games, like I'm happy to go back to the well with that. If the field's not going to be on it, it's a pretty strong tournament play as well.
Yeah, as things stand, obviously, if Joel is out, he would gain a lot of steam and they'd kind of flip, and maybe Cade would be a little bit less owned. We could kind of go with that logic. But yeah, I mean, Max has been crushing. Look at his game logs. He's been getting it done for sure. He's far from a bad play. Don't love the almost 10K price, but if Embiid is out, it feels a lot better for sure. All right, going down to the mid-range and values. I mean, obviously, the one that stands out the most is going to be Emmanuel Quickly. He got up to 30 minutes his last game. His minutes have ticked up every single game since he's been back. Plus, no RJ Barrett. I mean, I love Quickly here. He feels like a core play. 6.1K, a little bit too cheap for his role as his minutes start piling on here. Matchup with Philly on the road, not ideal if Joel is there, but at 6.1K, I don't really give a shit.
He's fine. I understand why he projects well. The minutes have come up, but you know, they have a pretty low total, not the best game. I think they have the lowest total on the whole slate by a pretty good margin. So if Quickly's chalk, I think there's enough else I like at point guard to where, you know, I'll be even with the field if he's around 30% owned, but not a conviction play I'm going to be over on. I don't think there's a huge ceiling there worth targeting. So not my favorite thing on this slate.
All right, so if you're not eating into the Quickly chalk, are you paying down there? Are there any values you like at point guard?
I like Tyus Jones quite a bit. Without Beal, his minutes have been up lately. Revenge game. Memphis plays at the fastest pace in the NBA. Jones is also pretty good per minute. He's still under 5K. Very strong value. I'm happy to be over on him. We didn't really mention Halliburton. I think he's okay if you want a run back. Like the Knicks look good on this slate, so the Pacers potentially could go overlooked depending on Miles Turner. I'd have more interest in Halliburton than the others if Turner's out, of course, but I think there's still some upside worth targeting there. As far as cheap stuff, I guess you can look at Miles McBride. If Anunoby's out, if Anunoby's in, I'm not really into it. Even if Anunoby's out, though, like he's the fifth option whenever he's on the floor. Pretty low floor, not a huge ceiling, but as of now, there's not a lot of punt value that stands out.
No, I think Tyus is the best play here down low at 4.8K. Totally agree with you. He gets more minutes without Beal there. Obviously, a little bit more usage too. So he looks really good at 4.8. Don't mind McBride, 35 minutes the last game. Just keep in mind, Cat missed a lot of that game with foul trouble, only played 28 minutes. So obviously Precious Achua, 8 more minutes, and McBride got in there a lot more too. Still, he's going to get like 25 minutes off the bench no matter what, as long as OG Anunoby is out. I think 4K flat on this slate, not a bad value whatsoever. But if he ends up being like super chalky because of a lack of value, we can certainly look for pivots. I mean, anytime Halliburton's under 8.5K, I'm open to listening to any argument. The only issue is he has not been great against the Knicks. Only 37 fantasy points per game across 2 meetings. Has not been great in general. He hasn't topped 45 fantasy points in many games. He's been pretty bad. So for me personally, like, yeah, on a 4-game slate, if nobody's going to be on Halliburton, sure. But I would rather just play Ja, who's going to be like just as owned, if, maybe slightly more, or Brunson, who would be possibly good chalk at that price. I think that does it for point guard, though. All right, over to shooting guard. Devin Booker leads the way with a 46-point fantasy projection, not garnering much ownership, as I said before. Good play in a good game environment. A little bit expensive. Might prefer Maxey. Might prefer going up to Cade or going down to Brunson, or like you said, Hallie. There's just a lot of other options. Don't think he's a priority by any means, but the game and projection are good. Desmond Bane, like you said, among those Memphis guys, he's going to look really good at 7.5K. Do not have a problem with him at all. Kind of prefer him over Booker, 2,000 in savings. So when we start there, give your thoughts on Bane specifically and anybody else, and whether or not you do want to pay for Booker here.
I prefer KD between the two Suns on this slate.
He's way cheaper.
Positional thing too. I think there's just more mid-range stuff at guard I like. I do think Bane's a great play. The ownership's not very high as of now, so I like that a good amount. Kobe White in the mid-range looks awesome. Guard forward eligible now. Kind of the lead
small
dog
forward.
there.
Small forward Kobe White. Gotta love it.
Power forward Ayo Dosunmu. They just play a tiny lineup, it seems.
Yeah.
So good play, leading the team in usage without Levine. Decent game environment. They're only 4-point underdogs, 4.5 to Detroit. So I don't mind that. I actually like it quite a bit. Mikal Bridges, fine. A little bit better if Anunoby is out. Otherwise, I'm going down to guys like Grayson Allen, Grady Dick, Tim Hardaway Jr., even Aaron Neesmith at 3.6 is viable just because as of now, like we said, there's not a lot of pun stuff. So Allen's probably the headliner. I think he's a pretty good play, assuming he would start with Beal out again. And he saw 35 minutes in the last game, including overtime that he played. So pretty safe play, pretty good price on him too.
Yep, nothing new to add here. I think Dick and Allen would be the two guys I'd be looking at first. Yeah, not really eager to spend up here. Like I said, the guys I said, Booker and Bane are fine. I do agree with you, like Kobe at that price in that game, but it'd be mostly value to start things off for me. Scotty Barnes at small forward, up top, 44-point fantasy projection against Philly. He's actually been pretty good against them on the year, but like you said, lowest total of the slate for the Raptors. Not really that good of a matchup if Embiid is in. If Embiid is out, I feel a little bit better about it, but still 9.2. I just think there's better plays. And he's actually picking up ownership, which is a little disconcerting. Josh Hart feels like a way better play, 7.6K. We know he's a triple-double threat, going to play a ton of minutes. Pacers are not a very scary matchup, so I like him at 7.6. Kobe can be used here if you want to do that. I guess you could do PG-13 if Embiid sits. Otherwise, I don't have a lot of interest. Not super excited about him regardless, honestly. He hasn't been very good. But you could also use Grayson here. So I think for the most part, if I'm going to pay up, it's probably going to be Hart. And otherwise, I can just kind of put Dick at shooting guard and Grayson Allen here to get my build started.
Yeah, I think Scotty's okay, but not my favorite way to spend. He's had a pretty high floor without RJ and Pirtle and stuff, but it's kind of a neutral play for me. I do prefer Hart, like you said, a bit cheaper. Good spot too, especially if Anunoby is out again. A few more worth mentioning, I guess, would be Asar Thompson in 5-1. He's been quite good of late. The minutes have been a little bit up for him, so I don't mind that against Chicago. Obviously, a great matchup. And then you can save with like Gigi Jackson if you want. Patrick Williams, like a large field tournament play. Tim Hardaway Jr. never feel great about, but it is Chicago. So if you're going to play him in any spot, it might as well be this one. But yeah, like you said, it's kind of a mid-range with Kobe and Hart, or just pay down for Royce. I didn't mention Royce O'Neal, but I think he's a pretty good value too.
Yeah, I like the Azar Thompson call. Like 5.1 starting to get a little expensive for a guy that never can play 30 minutes apparently, but he just does a lot when he's out there. Really good per minute guy. So I'm cool with it. Awesome matchup against the Bulls. Yeah, he's just totally fine. Nobody else really stands out here for me personally. You can punt with Tim Hardaway Jr. like you said before, but that feels really gross. All right, over to power forward we go.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant, like you said, his projection is comparable to Devin Booker, but you save $500, and you can just use him in a lot of different ways. So I think he obviously looks awesome at 9K in that matchup. He had been missing some time, but he came back, and I don't think he really missed a beat here. 45 fantasy points in 45 minutes. So yeah, don't think we have to worry about that. So he looks awesome. Pascal Siakam, he looks good.
That was a while ago, wasn't it?
Was it?
I don't think he's played in like a week and a half.
Oh, this is his first game back. So, well, that's the thing, though. Wouldn't we worry about him being limited then?
I don't really think so. They don't historically limit him. He didn't miss that much time, so I assume he's good.
8 days is 8 days, my friend. Regardless, when you look at price and projection and game environment, KD does look good. Siakam is a pretty interesting play too, carrying double the ownership. Projection is kind of similar despite saving 1.3K. So I do have interest in Siakam if that checks out. JJJ, like you said, Hart, like we already talked about. I don't mind spending here because there's like 4 really good plays. I think as it stands, I'd be looking at Hart and Siakam for the most part. But like if the ownership's really going to flock that heavily towards Siakam, I will start going more towards KD for sure. There's a lot of value here too, namely Buzelis at 4.8K. He's been starting. He keeps scoring double digits. And he keeps playing right around 30 minutes. So he looks pretty darn good at 4.8K as well.
Yeah, he's probably the best value at this spot. One of the best values on the slate. Just without Levine, they're kind of embracing him and moving forward with him as a starter. So strong play. The price hasn't come around to reflect the new role. So no issue with that. Same with Royce O'Neal, like we talked about, Asar Thompson, Santi Aldama, the epitome of a tournament play, as always, with his insane range of outcomes. I'm happy to play him on a small slate and embrace the madness. I think Abaji again at 4K has been starting. Not a great per minute guy, but as a pivot away from like Grady Dick, I don't mind that. Obi Toppin, if Miles Turner's out, the minutes have been up for him. He's 4-4, so he's a bit pricey, but he is a good per minute guy. That Knicks matchup is a decent one as well. So there is a lot to like, all things considered. Like there's stuff at the high end, there's mid range, there's cheap. So this is definitely one of the better spots on the slate. We didn't even mention Tobias, who's been in pretty good form as well, still under 6K and playing Chicago, so he's viable as well.
Yeah, I'd say more than viable considering the matchup with the Bulls. The projection does not blow you away, but he is not that expensive. He plays good minutes, and you couldn't ask for a better matchup. So I like him quite a bit. I think he just is like in that no man's land, 5.9K. Like you feel like you should go up a little bit higher or just go to the value like with Buzelis. But I mean, like Buzelis at 4.8K, I feel like with him and Grayson and Dick, it just feels like it's very easy and feels right to start off my build with those 3 guys at like shooting guard, small forward, and power forward. Probably what I'm going to be doing right now, especially since he's not carrying crazy ownership. But I like the Santi call just because the Suns are not that good at defending the 3. 18th most 3-point makes allowed per game. So he definitely could get going here. And that's what he needs. He needs a good matchup. He needs a little extra run. Not sure how many minutes we can depend on him. Where he's projected for 22. That can come and go, as you know, based off of, whether or not he's actually hitting his shots. But I think at 4.6, as a possible pivot off of Buzelis or just in general, he looks like an interesting value for sure.
Did you say 18th most 3-point makes allowed per game?
Yeah.
That's not that many. That's like better than average.
Or no, they rank 18th.
Okay. So they allow like the 12th most then?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So sorry. Okay, so over to center we go. Cat is the best center based off projection, just barely edging out Joel Embiid. We don't know yet if Embiid is going to be in, but even if he is, right now, Cat looks like the better play. You also have KD there. I mean, up top, it looks like a cat slate for me. He has done decently against the Pacers, 45 fantasy points per game across 2 meetings. The matchup also sets up well for him. They do not defend inside well at all, and they also could be without Miles Turner. So I think he looks good at 9.4K, discounted compared to where he was earlier in the year, and just cheaper than Embiid, who could carry ownership. Right now, the ownership is actually flocking more towards Duren and Vooch, who both also look amazing. I think the best overall center play, obviously, is Duren right now. The only issue is he's going to be very chalky, and also he is foul trouble prone.
Yeah, that's another case where I might kind of be around, but I think it's someone like Smashing because center's pretty rich even on a pretty small slate. It's a good spot for Towns. Like even with Turner in, they get crushed by opposing centers. They allow the fourth most points in the paint per game.
Right.
Not that Towns is like a paint type of big for the most part, but I think he can exploit that pretty well. And then if Bryant is starting, he's just going to murder that guy. So great play at 9.4. He's unpriced. I do think Embiid is an awesome play if he's in. He's 10K flat. Minutes have come back down a little bit after he played 36 in his first game back for some reason, but that's a Raptors team without Pirtle and without Kelly Olynyk, obviously, who was traded. So they're starting Mobo at center. Like, I don't think anyone in Toronto is capable of handling Embiid. So if he's in, I think he's a pretty phenomenal play. And I had no issue pairing him with Maxey. Like, we've seen them both get there in the same game. So I like that a lot. I assume Towns is going to be the talk of the two. So I think I prefer Embiid if he's in, all things considered.
The Raptors are 21st in points allowed in the paint and 26th in the rebounding, and that's with Pirtle.
Yeah, they're not good with Pirtle. It's like this Indiana situation. Like, even if Turner's in, they're pretty bad. So both guys look good.
With everybody going right now to Vooch and or Duren, a really good strategy might just be pairing Cat and Embiid.
Yeah, I would like
because neither of them are picking up that much ownership, honestly.
Yeah, and you can pay down at other spots like we talked about. There's value at point guard you can pay down for and just pay up at center instead. I think that's perfectly fine. Might even be the preferred route as of now. But
I mean, yeah, right now that's the way I think I might be going.
There is a lot. Like I do think Vooch is a good play against Detroit and Duren as well. Like Chicago, I think allows the most points in the paint, and that's all Duren does essentially is score points around the basket and rebound, block some shots. So it is like the nut matchup for him, but you know, I think he's kind of priced appropriately. He's a fine play, just not someone I'm super convicted by. Jaren Jackson, like we talked about, against Phoenix, who has really mediocre bigs with Nick Richards and Mason Plumlee these days. KD, you can play at center. I think Achua is a pretty interesting play if Anunoby's out. I played him the other night, and he did not do anything, but he still got 33 minutes. He's been starting with Anunoby out. Still under 6K. We mentioned the matchup against Indiana being good for kind of paint-oriented bigs, and that's what he is. Not going to get a ton of usage, but given the minutes, I'm willing to pull the trigger on that. And then Mobo at 4.9, been starting, been pretty good. Foul risk against Embiid, of course, because he's quite a bit smaller than Embiid and probably not capable of handling him, but 4.9 for a decent per minute guy starting at center, I think is fine.
Yeah, and I just want to say on the Duren thing, like I'm kind of thinking out loud as far as like how I can strategically attack this slate based off the ownership we're seeing right now. If that is where ownership sticks on Duren and Vooch, I'm glad to go away from that and just do an entirely different build with these two stud centers. It feels awesome now that I look at it. But I will say that Duren has averaged 49 fantasy points per game across 2 meetings with the Bulls. Like, duh. Like, Chicago's been like just the best possible matchup for centers this side of Washington. So, like, if you want to play Duren, there's nothing wrong with that. I do worry, though, that, like, the third time around, maybe foul trouble will be a bit of a problem because Vooch is also a good interior player and also projecting very, very well. So probably they both just do fine, but they're also really owned. So I think you could just hope for that to not go the Field's way and then go attack the slate differently, especially since Cade is like 10.5K. Why not just go invest in the two best centers of the slate at less than 20% ownership? It feels like Wemby last night again, you know, like they're in really good spots. Like really, if Kat and Joel wanted to go live inside tonight, nobody's gonna stop them. Like even if Miles is in, nobody's gonna stop them. So I think those are the kind of situations we should try to take advantage of. Before we wrap it up here, any other values down here? I know like Boucher is like 4.1K. He's okay off the bench, and Jalen Smith, I guess, I mean, he only plays like 15 minutes, but good per minute guy. Are you willing to go down that far with these guys, or you think you want to stick more along the lines of like an Edie, Achua, or Mogbo?
I think if I'm playing a backup, it would be Stewart, and just hope that Chalky Duran gets into foul trouble, and then Stewart finds his way into more minutes. He's a good per minute guy as well. He's only 3,400, so if you feel comfortable punting a center spot, I'd probably do it there. Boucher is pretty interesting just because he's fully capable of going nuclear. He just doesn't get the minutes, and it's very frustrating. Even without all these other bigs, he's still getting minutes in the teens every night off the bench. So they clearly don't trust him. I'm willing to play him in a tournament because when you get him right, he wins everything for you, but it's very hard to feel good about it. I think Jalen Smith is okay. I think Brandon Clark is okay in the same vein. Sub 4K center against Phoenix, so don't mind that. But ideally, I'm paying up here, I think. And Thomas Bryant also, if Turner's out, obviously he's a good play.
Yeah, I was just going to say Thomas Bryant. I don't love that his price is now 5K, but Thomas Bryant would be looking at, 26 to 30 minutes probably as a starter if Miles is out. That would be good enough to be in play for sure. But I will say also, like, positional eligibility is a big deal for me. So, as I know it is for you too. So, like, I don't know. Do I want to give up one of those spots to like a Stewart or somebody like when Boucher, at least like Boucher and like Obi, at least they're power forward eligible. So that's kind of nice, just something to keep in mind for everybody watching. All right. So let's wrap it up here with our flag plant and general strategy for the night.
It's either Maxey or Embiid. I guess I would lean Embiid if he's in just because the matchup against Mobo is so good. And I don't know if people are going to play it that way. So I'm happy to be well over the field on him. I do love that center build like we've been talking about. I would like to do that. We'll see if that actually transpires with news that happens, but I think that pairing is very interesting tonight.
Yeah, I'm really interested in it just because between Duran and Vooch, there's just going to be a ton of ownership soaked up between those two guys. So just going completely away from that is just going to, number one, give me a little bit more of a ceiling and less of a low floor, because if Duran does get in foul trouble, that's going to be a big problem. And then also just ownership-wise, just completely make my build different from a lot of the teams out there. So a different flag plant, though, from what you already said, I'm going to go Ja Morant. I think his ownership is a little bit too low for the game environment and the minutes he's been getting lately. If we can hope for like 32 to 34 minutes, which is less than what he played in his last game, then he could have monster upside in this spot. So I really like him. And then in general, I do not mind eating a lot of this value chalk right now, like Dick, Grayson, Buzelis. Like, I don't mind these guys at all because I plan on getting very different elsewhere, like with Ja or with a Cat or Embiid play at center. All right, that is going to do it for us. If this helps you out in any way, please give that like button a hit. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're not doing so already. Come visit us in Discord for free so you can get updated picks, analysis, and advice. And hopefully we can help you win tonight. All right, thanks for watching and good luck.